Spider-Man Brand New Day is finally out in theaters, and it has been a wild success. It's almost close to beating Avengers Endgame at the box office, which is just a crazy, crazy thing. This was my most anticipated film of the year, and having finally watched it and had some time to process it, here I am today with my thoughts. Welcome everyone. This is the Milestoner, and today I want to take a deep dive into Spider-Man Brand New Day and discuss my thoughts, positive, negative, mixed, with you guys. Now, I will be dividing this review into two sections, non-spoiler and spoiler, so I can give my complete thoughts on the film. If you haven't watched the film yet, don't worry, I will give a spoiler warning before talking spoilers. Now, if I had to sum up my thoughts in one sentence, I really enjoyed this film. This was, in my opinion, the grounded street-level story that Tom Holland's Spider-Man has been missing. A proper adventure through New York City with Spidey swinging across the skyline, taking down criminals. This is exactly what we have been waiting for over the last 11 years. Sure, Homecoming had a bit of that, but every Spider-Man film in the MCU has somehow been tied to the events of the larger universe in one way or another. This, however, is Peter Parker's story through and through. And Tom Holland really cements himself as the definitive Spider-Man with this film. It perfectly captures the toll that being Spider-Man takes on Peter Parker's life. The loneliness, the pressure, and the constant stress. Peter goes through so much over the course of this film, and that emotional journey sits at the very heart of the story. Tom does an incredible job portraying every layer of the character. Not to mention, this is probably the most he's felt like classic Spider-Man in the MCU, constantly swinging through the city and pulling off these insane stunts. A lot of them even reminded me of the PS4 Spider-Man game. It honestly felt like the game brought to life. The film also throws in a couple of classic Spider-Man villains into the mix, including Scorpion, while also featuring a few MCU heroes as well. It makes the world feel lived in, without ever losing sight of the fact that this is still first and foremost a Spider-Man story. Speaking of which, I also really enjoyed Punisher in the film. John Bernthal is always fantastic as the character, and this movie gives us the chance to explore a different side of him. Sure, pairing up Punisher with Spider-Man naturally means lightening him up a little, but I still really enjoyed the dynamic, especially in the second half of the film. Sadie Sink is also in this film, playing Mystery character. I'll talk a lot more about her in detail in the spoiler section because her character has been kept under wraps throughout the promotions of the film, and she's probably also the character I have the most thoughts on. It was definitely interesting to see how she fit into the story, and the role that she plays directly ties into the film's central themes. That being said, there were also certain decisions taken with her character that I was a bit mixed on. Now, the trailers also heavily featured the return of Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, and even though he only appears for a relatively small portion of the film, I genuinely think this is the best they have handled Bruce Banner in a long time. Plus, Savage Hulk is finally back after 11 years. Now, I did have certain issues with the film, which I will get into more during the spoiler section, but overall, I did feel there was simply a little too much going on in the story. There are a lot of elements at play here, and I'm not sure they all blended together as well as they could. Especially in the second half, a couple of story threads felt that they were resolved a bit too conveniently just to reach the conclusion. For me, the first half was definitely much stronger than the second half. Overall, however, I had a great time with this film. It definitely sets up a lot of exciting possibilities for both Spider-Man and the wider MCU that I'm genuinely excited to see explode. Now, moving into the spoiler section. If you haven't seen the film, you can skip ahead to my final rating of the movie. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. Let's talk about Jean Grey. She is in this film. She is the mystery character, the villain of the film. And I feel the way the story handles her is quite interesting. We do get to see how unstable her mind can get while using her powers, especially in the climax, and I feel that is solid groundwork for a potential Dark Phoenix storyline later on in the upcoming X-Men saga. And speaking of the X-Men, this film does a lot to set them up. We obviously have Jean Grey leaving New York at the end of the film in search of a family. Peter's universal inhibitor is also very clearly going to become the foundation for the mutant dampening collars later on, which is honestly crazy to think about. Peter ends up being partially responsible for the capture of so many mutants going forward. However, coming back to this film, I was a little mixed on how they handled Jean. First off, she's an outright villain in the film. She controls people's minds, potentially injures civilians while driving a tank through the city, literally forces a man to walk into an oncoming car, and emotionally plays with Peter throughout the film. So when we learn that she's doing all this, just because damage control kidnapped her sister. Are we just supposed to forgive her for all the previous things? Peter surely forgives her, and the film expects the audience to do too, which I felt was a little odd. The turnaround comes so out of left field that it felt a bit jarring. Sure, she's still the main thread during the climax, but the film wants us to fully sympathize with her almost immediately, and that just didn't completely work for me. Not to mention, this is yet another film in a row where the villain is ultimately defeated by the hero talking them down. Not sure how I feel about this trope. I also felt that Peter's mutating powers and changing anatomy, which are the major plot points through the majority of the film, are resolved a little too easily during the climax. It honestly felt like there was more to that subplot that ended up being cut, only for it to be replaced by Peter simply focusing and taking control. Not having Man Spider in here was truly a missed opportunity. On the other hand, I absolutely loved how this film explored Peter's relationship with New York City. His partnership with the police, the casual conversations with everyday people, all of it really drove home just how much being Spider-Man means to him. I genuinely teared up near the end when the citizens of New York gathered outside the hospital to cheer for Spider-Man, while Peter himself stood anonymously within the crowd. It really drove home how much effect he had as Spider-Man, and also cemented the fact that as long as the people love him, Spider-Man is never truly alone. It really reminded me of the train scene from Spider-Man 2. As for the ending, I have seen a lot of different theories about what actually happened. Personally, I would like to believe that Jean's psionic barrier altered something in Ned and MJ's minds. Earlier in the film, we see her entering Bruce Banner's mind, which ultimately allows Savage Health to break free. Bruce even tells Peter that she broke something inside his head. So I think she unknowingly left behind some tiny fragment of Peter in Ned and MJ's memories. That would explain why MJ is holding onto the Black Dahlia necklace that Peter gave her, and why Ned instinctively remembers the handshake that he and Peter used to do. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. It was an absolute blast, with Tom Holland delivering his most nuanced performance as Peter Parker while giving us the grounded, street-level Spider-Man adventure that we have been waiting years to see. Sure, the story and its ultimate resolution have their flaws, but it's still an incredibly fun Spider-Man film. I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. But those are just my thoughts. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments if you agree or disagree and what you ultimately felt about the film. Also, if you enjoyed this video and want more such content, do like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.